After the Chernobyl reactor exploded 27 years ago, just a few months later, Hans Blix, who was the head of the IAEA at the time, he came to visit the area and he said any rises in cancer will be statistically insignificant, and in a few months' time all these people will be able to move back home. Now initially they just evacuated 10 kilometres around the plant, and then soon afterwards they realised that wasn't nearly enough and evacuated 30 kilometres. And it was several years after that, with help from Japanese scientists, that maps were created showing that there were very contaminated areas up to 200 miles away. The people in the very contaminated areas obviously have never been allowed home. 500,000 people were evacuated, and most of them lost their home and their homelands forever. Within a couple of years, the thyroid cancer started to appear, and the Americans put massive effort into trying to show that it wasn't Chernobyl, there was some other cause. But 2 or 3 years later, thyroid cancer, which had been so rare, had risen by more than 100 times in the very contaminated areas. And even the American scientists couldn't deny that it was definitely caused by Chernobyl. But the mantra ever since then has been, well, Chernobyl caused thyroid cancer, but that's not very serious because children don't usually die. And apart from that, there have been no effects except radiophobia. And that's the horrible, cruel term they use for the fear and the stress that of course families feel when they know their children are eating contaminated food. And there's been so little research from Western scientists to show all the other health effects, and they refuse to believe the research conducted by Russians and Ukrainians. I know from talking to doctors and scientists in Belarus and to the parents and associations who support the children that there are major rises in many other types of cancer, a huge rise in diabetes in children in the more contaminated parts of the country, lots of children with heart problems, and doctors have shown that cesium builds up around the heart. It's very likely to be a link, but no one's trying to prove it. Children with many different kinds of disabilities, and in the last few years many of those people who were babies or small children at the time of the accident have now had children of their own. Quite a lot of children are being born with leukemia or cancer, and many are born with all sorts of genetic disorders and defects, very likely linked to Chernobyl. But again, as long as nobody researches it, nobody can prove it, and the nuclear industry and the Western governments are able to keep saying there's no major problem from Chernobyl. When Fukushima happened, the first experts who came on the television were saying, this is not very serious, nothing major is going to happen. It's not nearly as serious as Chernobyl. And I noticed by the second day, they were saying, no, it's still not very serious, but of course Chernobyl wasn't serious either. We've been, for almost 20 years now, we've been bringing children for recuperative holidays, mostly children who've had cancer or who have diabetes or have other major health problems. And it's particularly important to bring the teenagers. It means so much to them that people care enough to try and give them a health-giving holiday. But we also support the hospices. We support not just the children who don't make it through cancer treatment, but all those families who've got children with very severe genetic disorders. For the Chernobyl anniversary this year, I hope that anti-nuclear activists will be doing something to raise the profile of Chernobyl and the warning that it gave to the world about nuclear power. We're asking people to light a candle in their window on the eve of the disaster on the 25th of April. That's something that anybody could do, and we hope that you'll help us to spread the message. We have Remember Chernobyl wristbands and badges that people can wear. So we hope that all those involved in Chernobyl charities, the Japanese people who are raising awareness about the tragedy of Fukushima, and the whole of the anti-nuclear movement will work together to raise awareness about all those who continue to suffer from these dreadful nuclear disasters, and that we can work together to make sure it doesn't happen again. Thank you.